Well, first of all, we shouldn't have a draft.
At all?
No, I don't think so.
What if it's an emergency?
Well, the fact that they're bringing this up now, to me, points to the fact that the only reason we would need a draft is because our warmongering politicians are starting wars that they know the American people aren't going to support.
Tulsi Gabbard was on Bill Maher's Real-Time show, and the topic of a draft, a military draft, came up, and Tulsi Gabbard and Bill Maher had a strong disagreement on this. So we're going to take a look at the clips here, hear what they had to say, and I will interject with my own thoughts. So let's take a look.
Okay, here we are in overtime. I know I'm not in my suit. You'll have to watch the show to know why, but we're here with Chris Matthews and Tulsi Gabbard, and the first question is to you. Tulsi, should women be required to register for the military draft? I saw this. This is so interesting. The Democrats, so great at politics. I don't know why they brought it up now. I mean, men, I almost forgot this. Men do still have to register for the draft. Nobody gets...
Well, this is actually something that they also just changed in the legislation through the National Defense Authorization Act. Just a few weeks ago, is now men don't have to register because they're automatically registering them as soon as they turn 18.
Okay.
So you don't have to actually, you don't get to fill out a card or anything anymore.
But I remember I was about to be registered. I just turned 17 in 1973 when they were still drafting for Vietnam, and it was like, that was the year. It was like, oh, we're not, oh, it's like, oh boy, did I luck out on that one.
So I'm going to stop here for just a second. Bill Maher says he lucked out on that one. We'll double back around to that based on something that he's going to say later in the clip, because I think that's very important. But let's continue.
But they still registered you. Now the Democrats in an election year have brought this up for I don't know what reason, saying now we want women to register because there's 250,000 women in the military right now. And if something was so catastrophic that we did have to draft people, why shouldn't women go? But why bring it up in an election year are my two questions.
Well, first of all, we shouldn't have a draft.
At all?
No, I don't think so.
What if it's an emergency?
Well, the fact that they're bringing this up now, to me, points to the fact that the only reason we would need a draft is because our warmongering politicians are starting wars that they know the American people aren't going to support. When you look at what happened after
they didn't start the wars.
Well, when you look at what happened, you look at what happened after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Thousands and thousands of people from all across the country set aside their lives and volunteered because they wanted to go and fight for freedom and security and for peace. And you look at what happened after the attack on 9/11. So many Americans like myself, we enlisted to be able to ensure the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. And so when you look, to me, it's a big red flag that they're bringing this up right now. First of all, as we have multiple wars burgeoning around the world. But as a I've been deployed 3 times to different war zones. I don't want to be in a foxhole next to somebody who doesn't want to be there. First of all, that bond and that trust that exists between servicemen and women who are, when bullets are flying is so essential. You don't want to have somebody next to you who's like, hey, I don't want to be here. I don't want any part of this. That creates
just numbers.
A huge problem.
Come on. Sometimes it's just
you're talking about life and death. You're talking about life and death.
I know, but exactly. And if we need that numbers of troops, there just are the people in Gen Z. They're not going to volunteer. I've seen videos of them talking about it. I'm like, no, you're right. This generation can't do it.
Okay, a few different points. So I agree with some of what Bill Maher is saying. I also agree with a lot of what Tulsi Gabbard is saying. The first thing here, and that's what I wanted to double back to. So Bill Maher is trashing Gen Z for not wanting to be involved in these wars of choice that the United States decides to get into. But he happily admits how he was able to not, he didn't get drafted for Vietnam and how lucky he was in that scenario. So doesn't sound any better than Gen Z, who he's bashing. But the point that Tulsi Gabbard makes here is great. So our warmongering politicians choose to go into these wars. Basically, is there any war since World War II that the United States really should have been involved in? Most people think we shouldn't have been in Vietnam. Then we get attacked on 9/11. They choose, based on lies, to invade Iraq and Afghanistan, instead of going after Saudi Arabia, who the terrorists came from. But of course, Saudi Arabia is our wonderful ally, so we can't go after them. As Tulsi Gabbard is saying here, our warmongering politicians choose to go into these wars. Rather than having a draft, send the politicians' kids. Have them, we should have a law that any war that our politicians choose to get involved in, they should have to send one of their family members themselves first, or go themselves, instead of drafting Americans to go and fight in wars that Americans don't want to be involved in. Iraq and Afghanistan didn't attack us. These wars, other wars that we're involved in the Middle East for some of our so-called allies that we've given hundreds of billions of dollars to over the years, we weren't attacked. I'm talking about what's happening in the Middle East right now. The United States wasn't attacked. Our ally was attacked. Most Americans think we should not be involved in that. The same thing with Russia and Ukraine. We weren't attacked. That was our ally who was attacked. And I know we have treaties and alliances with allies and all of these things, but almost the vast majority of people in the United States do not support having American troops be forced, American citizens be forced to go into wars against countries who didn't attack the United States, period. So Tulsi Gabbard is exactly right with what she's saying here. Now, Bill Maher is correct that it's really dumb on the part of the Democratic Party to be bringing up the idea of having women have to sign up for selective service and the draft, just like men do when they turn 18. That's not a political winner. Most people are going to be against that.
The number of people you're going to have is just going to be, it's going to be a smaller force. I mean, compared to, I mean, how many, there's over 1 billion Chinese people if the war breaks out with them. I mean, I don't want to get cataclysmic about
these wars don't just happen out of thin air. I think that's my point.
No, but we didn't start them. We didn't invade Ukraine, and we didn't attack Israel. That's a silly thing to say.
I think the Iraq War was coming right out of the Dick Cheney's office.
That's true.
Oh, but that war.
That's true.
Yeah,
okay, well, that's not Biden.
That's 200,000.
That's not Biden, but that's something that happened in the last 20 years. That's the type of wars that we get involved in. And the American people have seen this over and over and over again throughout the generations and over the past decades. And people are just saying enough. We don't want to have our young people go and die for wars that shouldn't involve us in countries that haven't attacked us. And not to mention the loss of lives, but the trillions of dollars that we've spent. And the politicians say, oh, you know what? You want these things here at home? You want health care? You want education? All of these, and don't want to be in massive debt for it. Now, we don't have the money for that. But we can have trillions of dollars that can be spent on wars in foreign countries, and they don't even blink an eye. There's very little discussion about where the money is going to come from for that. So anything for us here in our own country, we don't have the money for that. But if it's to go and fight a war somewhere else or help out a so-called ally somewhere else, we've got almost unlimited funds for that.
Dead people over there, and 4,000 of our people, and that was created by the neocons and Dick Cheney. Yeah. They did it. They did it in the op-ed pages of our major newspapers. They started the war, and they enjoyed it.
They did.
Chris Matthews 100% right on that. Just to reiterate here, I think Tulsi Gabbard is 100% right. We should not have a draft. We should not be forcing young men and young women to sign up for wars that could potentially happen that don't involve us at all, the country of the United States, the people of the United States, that our politicians choose to get involved in, and 99% of the time the involvement is because of lobbying money. They're getting money from certain groups whether it's oil companies, whether it's lobbyists from specific countries, particularly in the Middle East. That's the reason why we're getting involved in these wars, not because of democracy or whatever BS they want to lay on people. And people are tired of this. They agree with what Tulsi Gabbard has to say, and they don't want their kids or themselves to be forced to go and fight in these wars. Bill Maher is right that this is really dumb politically from the standpoint of the Democratic Party to say, okay, now we're going to require young women to be part of the draft as well. So he's right in that aspect, but I disagree with Bill Maher that there's going to be some massive war that we're going to be unprepared for. Like Tulsi Gabbard said, in World War II, when Pearl Harbor was attacked, young people signed up to go and fight. The same thing with 9/11 when we were attacked, even though the Bush administration was wrong about where they sent the troops and how they handled the war after that, young men and women signed up to go and fight. So we're not going to have, Bill Maher's completely wrong about this, we're not going to have a problem getting people to sign up to go and fight if it's a real valid reason. Sorry, Bill Maher, young people are not going, and he admitted himself he wouldn't have wanted to go and fight in Vietnam. So he clearly didn't think that was a cause worth dying for. And young people feel the same. They are not going to fight in these foreign wars that are all based on essentially somebody out there, a few somebodies making a lot of money. And it has nothing to do with protecting the United States or democracy. But what do you think? Who's right here? Do you agree with Tulsi Gabbard that there shouldn't be a draft? Do you agree with Bill Maher that there should be a draft? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.